Well, hey, welcome back to the Vintage Electronics channel. Today we're going to be talking about this thing. That is the Sinclair ZX-81, or better known in the US as the Timex Sinclair 1000, which was billed as the first computer you could really afford. It was 99 bucks. Was it worth the money, or was it a little bit too late? You be the judge, coming up next. So those of you who are fans of the channel know that I just absolutely love any type of vintage electronics you can find, hence the name of the channel. I really have a place in my heart for computers because I was born in the late 70s and grew up throughout the 80s and was there for basically the birth of the home computer craze, the 8-bit computer craze. We owned a Commodore. I had friends that had Tandies. We had Apple IIs in school. I think there was a VIC-20 in one of the classrooms at one time, and maybe even a Commodore PET. So I've used them all, and I have an appreciation for all of them. So if I sound critical of this, it's not because I dislike it. I'm just trying to give my opinion. Everybody's got their own. You're welcome to leave yours below. Now, in the UK, this was the Sinclair ZX-81. It was introduced in 1981 by Sinclair. Everybody knows who that is, Sir Clive. In the UK, this had 1K of RAM. Now, you could get an expansion pack. This is a 16K RAM expansion pack, which was actually needed for a lot of games. 1K, really, if you filled up the screen, all your memory was taken. There was no room for it to do anything else. Now, in 1982 is when Sinclair and Timex, yes, the watch people, actually struck up a deal to distribute this in the United States. So it made it over here in 1982. And it's basically the same as the ZX-81. They just doubled the RAM to 2K, right? And it has an NTSC RF output on it for US TVs. So in the United States, this hit around the same time the VIC-20 was coming out from Commodore. And it had color, had slightly more RAM. You could get a disk drive for it. So in the US, we had a slightly different perspective, I think, on home computers. In the UK, these were wildly popular. You hook your cassette deck up to it, you get your games on cassette, you have a great time. But for some reason in the United States, that never really caught on. A lot of people over here had disk drives, whether it was a 5 1/4, 3 1/2, whatever. So these weren't really popular over here. And as the packaging said on these were really the first computer you could really afford. Over here in the United States, it sold for $99, and they actually came down in price very, very quickly. At some point, $79, and then even less. Eventually, they were given away. They just really weren't really popular. At one point, these were selling for $49 at the same time that Commodore was running a special that you could trade in any computer on a VIC-20 and get $100 off. So a lot of people bought these when they were 49 bucks just to trade them in. So what makes these less popular in the United States than some of the other computers that were out, like the Commodore and the Apple II and those? Well, it has to be the RAM. Is one thing, in my opinion. Having just 2K of RAM means that to run any type of program, like we've got Frogger here, we've got the flight simulator, and we'll take a look at these here in just a little bit. But in order to run those, you have to buy the RAM expansion package. That's a 16K RAM upgrade. You have to have a cassette deck to be able to load your programs in. This did come with a really nice manual. I do have to say, for such an inexpensive, small computer, they did a really good job on the manual. It's a bound manual, gives you basic programming instructions, some example programs in there for you to work with. So they did a really good job on this. I will say this was a good computer if you just wanted to learn the basics of computer programming. They were really good for that. The downside, another downside, is the keyboard on these things. It's got a membrane keyboard. It's tiny. I mean, I don't have big hands, but that's the size of the computer. Very cheap, very plasticky. As far as inputs and outputs on this, has a cartridge port on the back, which is also where your RAM expansion will plug into. On this side, we've got the RF output. That's a channel, what is it on this one? Channel 2 or channel 3 RF output on that. You got your ear and mic sockets to hook up your cassette deck so you can retrieve and save programs on it, and your 9-volt DC input, which ironically is the same 3.5 millimeter jack as the ear and mic socket. So as you can imagine, I bet you a lot of these were fried by plugging the power into the wrong jack on these. So a neat little computer. I want to take a look at a couple of programs on it so we can see what these look like. These are black and white. There's no sound, and it's a very low resolution, almost text character based output on these. So it's nothing really impressive, for a real computer under $100 in 1982. We can give it the benefit of the doubt. But I'll let you be the judge of that. Let's get this all hooked up and hook up the cassette deck to it and try to load in some programs. All right, well, to get this thing ready to play a game, there's a few things we have to do first. Let's pick a game. We're going to go with Frogger, because I think we're all familiar with that. The little frog you got to get across the road and get across the river on logs. We're all familiar with it. Great game from Sega. So we will get our Frogger cassette. Get that put in our cassette deck there. We need our RAM module, which plugs into the edge connector on the back. We do need to make sure that that is seated properly. I have heard stories that if you do not get that in there all the way, or you try to take it out while the thing's plugged in, it could actually fry the computer. Our cassette deck is going to go into the ear jack on the side. Plug our TV in. All these wires everywhere. And then finally our power. Get this powered on. And let's see what we got on the screen here. Okay, well, my capture device doesn't seem to like this computer very much, so we're going to have to go direct off of the monitor here. But when you power it up, you get a K screen, and the keyboard on these is actually set up with shortcuts, so it makes it a little bit easier to type with this horrible keyboard. So we'll hit load, and we're going to play Frogger. There we go. Hit enter, and then play on our deck. And those lines are actually the computer searching for the program. It can either display video or load a program. So once it finds the program, we should actually get a little bit different. There we go. Get a little bit different signal there. And now it's going to take 4 minutes and 30 seconds to load. So let's fast forward a bit. Hey, there we go. After about 5 minutes, we finally have a game. Turn off the cassette deck. And remember, this thing, no sound, no color. It is all black and white. Kind of odd that this thing also has directional arrows on the keyboard, but we don't use those for the game either. We use A and Z and N and M to move the frog. Let's see, press P to play. One player. And I'm going to say I'm a 0 skill level because I haven't played this in years. So there's the graphics you got in 1982 on the ZX-81 or the Timex Sinclair 1000. This is Frogger. So let's see if we can make this little guy work here. I don't think I was too good at this when I was a kid either. But we'll try it. Let's get him across. Come on. There we go. Now these are the logs, if you remember from the arcade game or from the Atari 2600 version. Hop on there, hop on there, hop on there. And I probably just killed myself. There we go. Hey, we did it. So that is Frogger on this system. Not very impressive. I don't know that in the early 80s as a kid, I guess it'd have been okay. I can't really get excited about this system. Let's see if the flight simulator is any better. Now, according to the box, the flight simulator takes 12 and a half minutes to load. So let's see if we're going to be disappointed after 12 minutes of loading and give that a try. We'll fast forward through that 12 minutes for you and end up back on the screen here. Pretty sure this is the longest 12 minutes of my life. Oh my gosh, it works. Okay, let's see. Do you want just the final approach? Well, since I don't know much about this game, that's probably the best thing to do. I'm reading through the instructions as it was loading. With the 12 minutes and some, you have plenty of time. So it looks like we do have key controls for everything. And increased throttle. We've got flaps, landing gear. Actually, this thing's pretty, seems to be pretty full featured. Let's see what it looks like. So we're going to hit Y for yes. Final approach. Wind effects. I'm going to crash it anyway, but I'm going to say no. And there we go. That is a flight simulator in 1982. So it looks like up at the top, we've got our front windows. We're at 800 feet, 151 knots. So let's go down a little bit and see what that does. Okay, so if we pitch down, it changes us up at the top there. All right, we'll go nose up a little bit. There we go. I have to say, this isn't the most exciting flight simulator I've ever seen. But then again, I don't think I really expected it to be the most exciting flight simulator I've ever seen in my life. See if we end up with a runway somewhere. Is there a way to see that? Switch to visual of runway. V. Oh, that's wonderful. There's no telling what that is. Okay. Let's go back. There we go. All right, let's try this again here. Yeah, I just don't know that I can get too excited about that. I guess if somebody was really into flight, maybe this would be a little bit more exciting, but I used to really enjoy some of the Microsoft Flight Simulator stuff. I always thought that was pretty neat. Yeah, it looks like I probably just crashed. Crash report. Yeah, that's what I figured. Crashed into the ground at a speed of 179 knots. Yeah, I don't think we're going to fly again. I think that was enough excitement for one day. So what are my final thoughts on this system? Well, I think we have to look at it from a couple of different perspectives. At one point, this was selling for $49 in the United States. That's 49 bucks for a computer that's already put together. I would consider this a real computer. It does have a keyboard. You have a way of loading and saving programs. You can play games on it. You can learn to code. So for $49, I think you get what you pay for. If you wanted a better computer, you could certainly get that. You could buy a VIC-20 or an Apple II. But for 49 bucks, okay. Now, I still can't get excited about it. I don't know that I would have been super excited about it in 1982 either, considering what else was out there on the market at the time. But for a low-cost home computer, yeah, it's okay. I don't particularly like the fact that for most of the games, you would have had to spend more money and buy the RAM pack. You know, that's going to be an added expense. And you'll have to have a cassette deck too if you want to load the programs. So if you think about that, you're probably getting closer to VIC-20 territory. I mean, at one point, they were selling the VIC-20s at about the same price as one of these. So here in the US, we have a little bit different perspective on it. Now, in the UK, where the ZX-81 was a a homegrown microcomputer by Sir Clive Sinclair. This was a great computer. This was what most people cut their teeth on, and I respect that. I really do. The games took a long time to load on cassette. That's something that we didn't deal with a lot here in the US. I know we had a Commodore 64 with a disk drive. It was still really, really slow, but I don't remember it taking 12 minutes to load a program. And most of the time, after that few minutes that it took to load, it wasn't quite as disappointing as either of these. So I think it comes down to personal preference. I love the system. I respect it for what it is. It took a lot of engineering to get this thing down to the price that they did. They were cheap in the UK too. So it was something that every family could afford. Imagine wanting a computer for Christmas, waking up in 1982, seeing that Santa Claus brought you a ZX-81 or a Timex Sinclair 1000. So in that case, hats off to everybody that had one. If you had the Timex Sinclair 1000 back when it was new, give me your perspective on it. Did you like it? Was it a great system? Leave your comments below on that. I'd love to hear about it. If you're in the UK or Europe and you had the original ZX-81, how did you feel about that machine? Was it a big deal, or did you want something that did a little bit more? Give us your thoughts on that. I want to remind everybody to please like this video and please subscribe to the channel. We're a low volume channel. We're not going to hit you with a bunch of notifications. It just really helps us out if you will please subscribe. The stats show that most of you who are watching the video aren't subscribers. We'd love to have you as part of the family. So please hit that subscribe button below. Until next time, I've been Chad. This is the Vintage Electronics channel, and we'll see you next time.